Hello there everyone, welcome to this week's Gran Turismo 7 Daily Race and Strategy Guide, and we've got a little bit of a treat for you this week as we visit the Nurburgring Endurance Layout, and we are in the Group 3 machinery. Business is sort of back to normal, I guess. Well, not quite, because we've kind of gone from the extreme of last week's race of just 7 laps around Eiger Normandy in the RA272, which I actually thought was quite a good combination, but just too short and just too hard to really make anything of the race. I'm not going to fault PD for giving us something original, but we've kind of gone the opposite way this time with an endurance race, as we've got 6 laps around the Nurburgring Endurance. It's going to be 50 minutes plus, and that's even before we start to talk about the chance of rain in this one. But yeah, 6 laps to get around, tyre wear at ×2, fuel at ×2, we've got the hard tyres, the inters and the wets available. BOP is on, damage is light, it's a rolling start, slipstream is real, there's no mandatory rules in terms of pit stops or tyre usage, and for your settings you just have the brake balance. So of course we jumped into the very first race at 8 o'clock in the morning here in the UK, and there was a lot of familiar names in there as well. I do believe there was actually 2 races at 8 o'clock that were kind of split between A+, so I think there was 2 full A+ grids at 8 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, I know there was another race going on at the same time with a lot of fast drivers in it. And I've got the weather up there for you as we went into the race. This is what the weather was saying to us. So it looks like the weather is very similar to what we had when we visited Spa. I think it was the 20 lap race around Spa, and there was quite often the chance of rain. So the rain is like a band, it's slow moving. I wouldn't go to say it's 100% dynamic, but it's kind of like a scripted kind of dynamic weather. So there is weather within the region, and just depending on what the race selects, that weather's either going to have an impact on the race, or I know for a fact that you can have a completely dry race as well. If you remember back to the race at Spa, it's going to work out very similar to that. So even though that rain looked like it was pretty close, we are starting on the hard tyres, because I kind of took a guess that the weather was going to be very slow moving, just as it was the last time we had a race set up in a similar manner, and that's going to prove to be the fact. However, I do believe there's probably some drivers in front of us that have possibly started on the intermediate tyres, because we are getting very bunched up here at the beginning of the race. So we've got a couple of very famous drivers in front of us. We've got Mr. Super GT himself, and we've also got Tidgney. So I don't have very much experience of racing with Super GT. Even though I've been playing the game for a long time, I've been in the top splits, I very rarely find myself on the same piece of track as the legend himself, but that's going to change in this one. This is actually going to be the first time I'm going to spend a considerable amount of time either in the wheel tracks or with Super GT on my bumper. But yeah, coming through the chicane for the first time here, it all goes a little bit wrong there. I think that's Tidgney in the Mercedes. Standard liveries, Tidgney, come on. You know, you're a YouTuber, you can't be having that, you know. Think about the fans. And then we're going to go down the inside of Bahamas here in the GTR. I think Bahamas is possibly on intermediate tyres and really just getting out the way. But that's worked out quite nicely for myself, and obviously Super GT as well, as we make our way up into P5. Getting the luck of the draw there, the way the cars kind of went off the track and kind of split and parted. We came through completely unscathed. So jumping forward here to the end of the first lap, Super GT disappeared down into the distance, very fast in that BMW, and we're still in P5, but we are catching Metal Ape Racer in the BMW as well. Seem to be struggling a little bit on this first lap. And we take a look at the weather here, you can see we've zoomed right in there to 5 miles. We can see there's kind of light rain going to get to the track pretty soon. This was a bit of a touch and go decision. Do we stay out? Do we go into the pits? The leaders have already gone past the pits, so I know they are staying out. Metal Ape Racer is going to go into the pits. I opted to stay out as well. The top 4, the top 5, they're all staying out. Tidgney, interestingly, going into the pits, and we'll see how his race worked out when he releases his video a little bit later in the day. But yeah, up into P4 now, courtesy of the driver in front making that pit stop. I'm going to jump forward here to halfway through, no, actually we're jumping forward to the end of lap 2, where we're still in P4. Super GT opened another 7 seconds out up on me there, and he was absolutely flying, to be honest with you, in this race, and we are going to come into the pits this time. The Track was okay there, but was definitely starting to get a little bit slippy towards the end. And we could see from the weather radar, we have some more significant rain coming in as well. But yeah, that's going to give us a wee chance to talk about the pit stop, because it's going to be kind of important in this one. So coming into the pits here, you can see we are actually short on fuel. So we're putting on the intermediate tyres, and we are taking on, I think we took on about 18% worth of fuel, just to make sure we get to the end of the race. Now, I know you don't burn as much fuel in the wet conditions, so we probably didn't really need to do that, but, you know, we were there. Refueling is at 7 litres a second, so it is a little bit slower than normal for Group 3. It's usually at 10 litres per second, so the more fuel you can save, then the better you are going to be in if you need to take any on at the pit stop. But yeah, let's talk about your pit loss here. If you change the tyres as we did there, took on 20% of fuel, your pit loss is around about 25 seconds. Now, if it's a dry race and you don't change the tyres and you only pit for fuel, you're going to be about 21 seconds. And if you pit for tyres but no fuel, it's going to be about 22 seconds. We'll talk about the pit stops and strategy in dry races a little bit later on in the video. But let's get back to the race here in hand. So we're into P5 on this one, actually passed by the McLaren in front of us during the pit stop sequence, as they didn't appear to take any fuel. I think they're about 2 seconds behind me when we made the pit stop. And yeah, they started to pull away from us, but then they made a mistake on, it's very, very tricky in these wet conditions, by the way. You know, the slightest little bit of late braking on the sort of slippy line and you are understeering off the track. You just have to be so respectful, so careful, just brake early, just kind of gentle on the brakes to sort of, you know, just caress the car around the car. You've got to be so gentle on the brakes, so into some of these braking zones. I am running ABS weak here, which is maybe not helping my situation, but we managed to make the pass there, take it up into P4, and then not too further on in the lap, in this corner in particular was super tricky. You can see we are actually drifting through it. The yellow flags are out, and Super GT has had a moment into that corner. That's one of the trickiest corners on the track in the wet. Make sure you're using some wet lines there. Break off the racing line, because it is very, very dangerous indeed. So, going through the bit of the lap 3 here, we seem to be quite comfortable in this phase of the track. It was quite interesting in this race because the track kind of changed different conditions. Drivers seem to be more comfortable in certain conditions. Cars seem to be more comfortable in certain conditions as well, but we felt quite comfortable in this kind of intermediate part of the wet weather here, when the track was actually quite wet. Super GT having another little bit of a moment there. He's going to have dirty tyres here. He's going to get on the throttle just a little bit too early, too hard there, maybe with the dirty tyres as well, and off the track he goes. Obviously, we're in an MR car. I would imagine in these kind of conditions the MR cars are actually more comfortable than the FR cars. But yeah, very, very tricky indeed, and I was really just, you know, the focus here was just to keep it on the track, and we were doing a pretty good job of that, to be perfectly honest with you. We were pretty comfortable as we sort of start lap 5 here. We got a 20-second lead over Super GT, and we're not really in contention against the cars in front. And all we had to do was really bring it home. But this is the Nurburgring, this is the Nordschleife in the wet, and yeah, we have a very lazy spin there just as we go through the fast corner on the sort of long drag at the beginning of the Nordschleife, and that was going to reduce my lead over Super GT from a very comfortable 19 seconds down to about 9 seconds when we got up and going. Now, I believe I would possibly start to suffer with some tyre wear issues, not tyre wear, tyre temperature issues at this point. I think my front tyres were getting colder and colder as this race went on. That was a problem in the Spa race as well, but I never had the app up at this point, so I have no idea if that was the case. But certainly as this race went on, my car just felt, I felt like a very, very little front grip, and we're really kind of struggling in these greasy conditions. Coming into turn 1 here, Super GT had closed that gap from 9 seconds down to about 4 seconds by the end of lap 5. So starting the last lap here with around about a 4-second lead, but going very deep into turn 1, that certainly didn't help our situation. And I think it's safe to say by the carousel we had a rear view mirror full of Super GT. But I was starting to get a little bit more comfortable. The dry line's starting to form here. I was quite confident as long as I kept on the dry line we could stay ahead, and then it would just be a drag down the back straight and see who had the faster car in a straight line. But yeah, the moment you start to feel comfortable around this track is the moment the track starts to go is that right? And that's exactly what's going to happen to us here. So we don't have very long to go. We've got about 2 minutes left of driving. We are in a podium position. It'll be a very nice podium indeed. Apart from that one little spin, we have pretty much driven flawlessly. Just kept the car on the track. We weren't particularly quick, to be perfectly honest with you, but you see we just got a little bit wide there, and as we had to go into the right hander, we were slightly on the wet line. It's going to make his understeer a little bit wide. Then Super GT gets a little bit of a nose into the right hander, and he's definitely never going to look a gift horse in the mouth like that. Only opportunity he might get, the dry lines there. He had the advantage of having both his tyres on the dry line. We were slightly off it, and off he went. But the battle wasn't over at this point. We decided, you know, we've got a bit of a gap behind us. We can afford to push and try and stay in that slipstream. And if we can stay in that slipstream, we should have a chance down the back straight, shouldn't we? NSX versus BMW. I was quite confident as long as we're about a second behind the BMW, we should be able to get some kind of run on that car down the back straight. But I was to be mistaken. Doing everything in my power here to stay in that gap. As I said, Super GT seemed very, very fast round here in all conditions. I think when it got properly wet, the advantage of the MR car over the FR cars was evident, but in a lot of the other conditions, Super GT, it was very, very fast in that BMW. But coming in through the fast right-hander here onto the back straight, we are less than a second behind that BMW. We got a pretty good exit as well, but even in the slipstream, as you're about to see, we just couldn't even make a dent on that gap. In fact, it's still going up as we look here. We've probably overfueled a little bit as we suspected. You know, half a lap worth of fuel left there, so we probably could have not bothered taking the fuel on. So do remember that you do not burn the same amount of fuel in the wet as you do in the dry. But you can see, yeah, you know, we're just not closing up on that BMW at all down that back straight. I didn't realise I had quite the grunt on it that it did. You know, I didn't feel like the NSX was particularly slow down the straight, but yeah, just couldn't touch it. But yeah, coming out the last corner here, we're going to come home in a P4. I'll be honest with you, I was very happy with this race. Apart from that one spin, did cost us the podium, obviously. The pace, the consistency. It was a very kind of, dare I say, Womble-esque drive. Nothing flashy, nothing too fast. Just keep the car facing the right direction, make some half-decent strategy decisions, and we come home with a P4. So let's talk about those strategy options. Obviously, if this one is a wet race, you're basically going to have to just try and judge it correctly. You can see that we pitted at the end of lap 2, even though we spent half a lap 2 on a pretty damp track. The slick tyres, even though it's the hard tyres, can actually handle a fair bit of water on the track, which is actually, to be honest with you, quite realistic. If you've ever seen GT3 cars in the wet, the slick tyres can actually handle a remarkable amount of water on the track, way more than what F1 cars. I couldn't believe it the first time that I seen it. I think it was a GT2 race, to be honest with you, at Monza, and I couldn't believe the level of water on the track that they were driving with slick tyres before the wet tyre became a better option. It really was very, very surprising to me. So I always thought Gran Turismo was a little bit unrealistic with how wet of a track you could drive on slick tyres, but it's maybe more accurate than I first thought. So yeah, if it's wet, it's up in the air, you'll get it right sometimes, you'll get it wrong sometimes. I would say, you know, just learn as much as you can as the week goes on. If it's dry, you do have a few options, and there will be completely dry races in this one. Your first option is to do the no stop and fuel save. Don't change the tyres. You'll save 20 to 25 seconds in the pits. You're going to have to do a lot of fuel saving. Your tyres are going to be a little bit shoddy towards the end, but it's definitely possible. If you are pitting, you can have the option of changing both the tyres and taking on fuel, or just changing the tyres and doing the fuel saving, or not changing the tyres and taking on the fuel. I don't know what one's quickest because I don't have enough time to test them all, but there is definitely options out there on what you would want to do. You'll save 4 seconds not changing the tyres in a pit stop, and obviously the refueling is at 7 litres per second, so the more fuel you can save the better. If you're having to take a lot of fuel on, it's going to be a lot longer in the pit lane. But yeah, definitely different things you can do. I suspect it'll become a no-stopper in dry races. They'll find a car that's, you know, people just fuel save and bump draft, basically, is my suspicion, but that remains to be seen. But yeah, I'll be definitely streaming this one this week. We'll be back to doing some streams on Gran Turismo, so do join me for them if you can. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.